James is having some burgers, shiitake burgers. I'm having carrot chai, and I'm going to be talking about Cast in Fury. And I won't talk about it very much because it's certainly not worth my time. And I can't believe I got through the whole book. Honestly, it's that bad. Oh, what did I write in for my... It's not that I expected high quality literature from a Harlequin book, but this was bad, long, and a total waste of everyone's time. Reader, writer, publisher, paper manufacturer, etc. Even for someone who'd like to be able to communicate in words with their cats, they'd be better off imagining their own story. Honestly, I was reading along, and I don't know why it's called Cast in Fury. It should be called Cast in Furry, maybe, or something. And I don't know why this woman, I feel sorry for the model because she has to strike this silly pose for this fantasy sort of thing. But I don't know what this story has to do with like a woman holding back water or whatever she's supposed to be doing there. It has nothing to do with that.
It looks as though she's doing almost like a John Travolta Saturday night, what was that, fever pose, you know. Like,
Well, the model might have thought she was doing that.
Yeah, maybe, you know, like, try to channel John Travolta here, you know. John who, you know.
Well, yeah.
Oh, maybe this dates back to it looks as though it's got to be like within the last 20 years or something like that. Let's just see.
But honestly, it was a long time through the book. I'm reading, I'm like, okay, so are these creatures that the main character, she's communing with them a lot of the time through the whole book. It's really boring. It's like the author didn't know where to start, so they just started writing, and it kept going like that. You're like, well, I gotta write a story somehow, so I'll just keep writing. You know, I've heard that advice from writers. If you don't know, in fact, my English teacher that I had in university, she said that about the essay writing. She said, if you don't know where to start, well, you just start writing. You know, you just start.
Well, you got to
writing
get something down. She's a good instructor for you, and she was a
nice
contemporary of mine, actually. I won't mention her last name, but Lori, if you're watching, the way you taught Pauline is much appreciated.
Yeah, she was a nice lady.
She was into music. She wrote some, well, it wasn't really poetry, but it was pretty good short fiction and stuff like that, or whatever, and which is what free verse it tends to be. And well, most of it tends not to be that good, but
You're very cold.
Yeah, well, I'm wearing my
How
what
are
we
you
used to
gonna
call
eat your
Hutterite
burgers?
gloves.
Why'd I even
my
warm up
dad
the
used to
burgers
teach
again?
at a Hutterite school, and well, it was on a Hutterite colony. And my mom, he taught at several, but this was in the neighborhood we were at. When I was living with them, eventually, 20 years old, I didn't strike off my own. They struck off on their own. They went to, they lived in the immediate vicinity, Sterling, it's called, one of the big 4 Mormon communities in southern Alberta, probably in all of Canada. And they struck off to Saskatchewan because my mom couldn't teach here. She didn't have the qualifications for Alberta. And she didn't really, I think, in Saskatchewan, but she taught there already when the qualifications were just the equivalent of a college degree. They call it school. It was 2 years of extra instruction beyond high school. And so they left here. But she taught at Hutterite colonies there, so did my dad. But this one's called New Rockport. They were wonderful people. They'd always give us a bunch of Christmas gifts, including stuff that they brought at Progress, the store. I hope the Progress is still going here in town. And they'd get these work gloves and stuff like that. They're nice and warm. It's kind of cool today. Easy on some plastic, but it's going to blast the book off. You don't want to. Yeah, Pauline doesn't care whether it hits the deck.
No, because I feel bad putting that one in the little library. Honestly, I don't even know if I'll staple my seeds in it. I might erase my comment.
It's 491 pages long.
Yikes.
The Harlequin romances that I was used to in my youth. And I don't think I ever went through one, but I was for the Muellers, the student newspaper at the University of Lethbridge then, as it is now. And we'd get unsolicited books coming into review, and we got some Harlequin romances, as I recall. I couldn't go through, like I didn't feel any, it's not as though we were saying, send us more, or anything like that. I didn't feel any great pressing need or urge or whatever to review them, much less read them, or read them, much less review them. So that's my way of segueing into
what you're going to review.
Yeah, look at this, Some of this stuff is from way back that I've never reviewed, but I will mention this. I haven't finished this book, and I'm going to review it, True Confessions. I got 15 pages out of, how many? 368 pages. 15 pages I haven't gone through, but it's a vocabulary, and I'll be finished that today. And the thing is, and that's just the English to Afrikaans part of the vocabulary. So I know the format. So it's not as though I'm going to give this a negative review, and that 15 pages of the English Afrikaans vocabulary would save it, or I'm going to give it a positive review, and it's going to be so junky, that part. It's not. It's about half of the English Afrikaans vocabulary is going to ruin it. Okay, so have you got the concept? I'll probably re-review it just in case and stuff like that sometime tomorrow. So there you go. All you folks who know more about South Africa than I do, even though you've never read Nelson Mandela's autobiography, don't care to, never will, and stuff like that, where he lays it on the line. His buddies, he calls them comrades. And so when Henry Kissinger told Paul Simon, don't give a hoot about he probably used the 4-letter word or something like that, about the ANC boycott of you, he said they're commies. Paul Simon.
I should say that this story, it is sort of, in a way it's about racism, because the cats that have a different color of fur, if you're a certain sex and you're born with this specific color of fur, you're not allowed to be raised. So you have to be terminated in the story, and this is being fought against.
Wouldn't the term be put down?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. I just woke up. You've been up since 3, but you're probably tired. 3:30, you were saying, or something like that. But
it's about time for a nap for me.
Yeah,
I got a lot done. Made, I don't know, 60 burgers. 60 burger patties.
Wow, she's
frozen.
Yeah.
So James gonna try them and let me know how they are. This patty is, it's same as the other shiitake mushroom patty, basically, that I made, but this one has chickpea flour in it as well to make it more higher protein. And it has celery seeds and sage. Quite a lot of sage as well. Sage goes well with mushrooms. So
I'll try to get some feedback to you on what these taste like. But I got a lot of stuff to review here.
Okay.
So, that was 491 pages, and I think they told the author, stay within 500, but bore the snot out of it. It's amazing what I was saying about how Harlequin romances, they kind of branched out with that sort of stuff. So.
And I've read some of their other stuff before. Some of the Luna stuff, and not all of it is awful. So... But this one is. This one's awful.
So, I was mentioning, Complete Afrikaans. I'm going through another Afrikaans grammar book. Now, this isn't that good. It's teach yourself, but it's over 350 pages. So, it's actually pretty good. Now, am I just doing this for fun? No. Yeah. And studying grammar is not really for fun anyway. So, no. Because I'm reading something, pardon my pronunciation, you people who speak Afrikaans, okay? It's something like Geschiedenis van Zuid-Afrika, history of South Africa. and it's a modern day one, you know, so it's very politically correct and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, and it's large format and fairly thick kind of book. So, you know, like I'm not satisfied with the little I know of South Africa, which is more than what you idiots know out there who are all head up about Nelson Mandela being something like a culture hero for you and stuff like that. He was a commie, okay, and he was combined nationalism. And I can remember someone who should know better, an academic with a PhD, saying to me, "Well, they're not commies. You know, like look, they haven't gone for it after so-called independence." Well, he didn't say so-called. And I'm going, yeah, but you notice, like when the South Africans, the Afrikaners, gave up on apartheid and their dictatorship, as it were, it was right after the fall of the Soviet Union. They felt relatively safe because they knew that there wouldn't be a outside agitator making things worse for them than it has proven to be. And this person who had a PhD is going, boop, boop, boop. He'd never thought about the coincidence. You know, the Soviet Union goes down in 1991, and then they have elections in relatively free elections in 1994. He'd never, you know, this is after several years of negotiation. He'd never realized that that's why. And you'll notice what they're doing. You know, they're doing the commie thing, which is now they've had relatively free elections, but they want to redistribute land, all land to the peasants. In this case, it's all land to the blacks or stuff like that. I was going to say indigenous, but a lot of the indigenous people aren't very black there. They tend to be Hottentots and Khoisan and stuff like that. So that's something that's never been mentioned, how the Bantu were moving south as the Boers were moving north. That's supposed to be made up sort of narrative. I don't know. You know, like who were down there originally? They were the Hottentots. The Bantu weren't there, you idiots. So yeah, again, I'm too true to be good. So here's another thing. I finished it up quite a long time ago. I got into these, not really, but I can remember reading some around the time of it was another one in this series, Le Petit Nicolas, Les Copains. Not Saint Copain, but Les Copains. I guess, you know, like, if it's a member of your body or something like that, you don't say, my hand, you say the hand, or his hand, you say the hand, right? Mm-hmm. So it looks as though your friends, your companions, I think copain would be a transmogrification, really, of companion, but, or something like companion. You know, it looks as though they're considered like members of your body or something. Mm. See how it's lay instead of say, it is companions. But it's the stuff is actually a little bit scary, and it's recent. I think the artist contributed to Mad Magazine, and Mad Magazine is old hat now, but it's not much older than I am. Yeah, this was put out originally in 1963, and there's all sorts of kids fighting and all that sort of stuff. You know, it's for boys, and it just wouldn't have been for me when I was a kid, because it was scary, the idea of other boys picking on you and stuff like that, because I was small for my grade, and I ended up being average height. Maybe I was a little bit small for my age as well. I don't know. I ended up not being. I was actually above average height when I was growing up. Average height was 5'8". I ended up being 5'9". Now it's average for men because kids seem to be getting bigger. Not necessarily better, hopefully, but I don't know, I'd be a little bit skeptical. So I was mentioning Mormonism. Went to one of the big four Mormon schools, I guess, but it was one of the big four Mormon towns here in southern Alberta, and they came up here, I think, in order to have plural marriages. You know, some of them just couldn't. That's polygamy for you. don't know the terminology. I think that's the term that Mormons use. Anyway, I'm going to mispronounce this, so if you're watching in the Ukraine, or if you're Ukrainian or over here in Canada or elsewhere, as a refugee escaping from Putin, Putin, as the French would say, or Puto, as, Puta actually is the Spanish would say. Vladimir. You watch it, Vladimir. Any variety. Anyway, it'd be something like Niga Mormona. Okay? I don't know where the accents come. Sce odne svidenia pro Jesa Isusa Christa. So I'm not worried about being able to pronounce it or speak Ukrainian or hear it, understand it, or to much less to write, which is the toughest thing to do. I just want to be able to read it. So the pronunciation isn't that important to me, but I'm going to have to really work on the accents, because accents tend to not come in predictable places. In Polish, it's the second last syllable, very few exceptions. In Spanish, it tends to be the second last syllable, and if it's not, then they will mark it when you're writing with an accent and stuff like that. In French, it tends to be the last syllable of a phrase, and so on and so forth. Predictable, but in Russian, Ukrainian, it's not. So I'm just starting this, okay? Warning, I'm going to get through it if I live long enough. Right? I'm going to get through it if I live long enough. So you got to keep up with me. So this same person who has a PhD was telling me quite earnestly that the Americans should have imposed social democracy on the Russians after 1991. And that was on the phone. I think this fella could hear me 2,000 miles away slapping my knee. Just like, wow, this guy's got no clue. No clue. Teaches English literature, and I suppose English language too. Although when it comes to English language, when it comes to the synchronous language and diachronic language, I know that. Well, like I've studied Chaucer, he hasn't. I've studied Langland, he hasn't. I've studied Beowulf, he hasn't. Okay, and then so that's the diachronic and the synchronic. Like I've looked at Creole, English Creole, in Western Africa. I've tried to study a little bit of hip-hop language, tried to study a little bit of Jamaican patois, what do you call it, patois? Anyway, a language, and I tried to look at a little bit of franglais, French English, and I don't think that exhausts it. And so, yeah, when it comes to language, I'd have him probably beaten all hollow. But when it comes to English literature, yeah, he's somewhat better. He's got his PhD. He's very good. I understand. I'm very good. I understand. So, yeah, he was saying, okay, so the problem with the Americans imposing social democracy on the Russians after the fall of communism is, hey, they knew what they had to do because of the shambles that happened in Germany after World War I. That's why they required unconditional surrender. You got all sorts of lefties saying, oh, the Germans would have surrendered if it could have been conditional surrender. The key is not so much getting a surrender, but a surrender that sticks. The surrender after World War I didn't stick. He ended up getting Hitler. You see, that's why you faux gauchers have got to start reading history, and if you do, reading it with application. The Americans saw what happened. They didn't want it to happen again. Even a dumb bunny like Eisenhower said when asked, will the American solution for, which wasn't a final solution, interestingly enough, for Germany, will it work? And he said, we're going to have to see in a couple of generations. and a couple of generations was roughly 1989 and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, it kind of worked. It kept the Germans from turning to fascism or Nazism or whatever for at least 2 generations, and it's actually on to now 3 generations. And well, that might be a bit much, but it's getting on towards 3 generations. Okay, it's been about 80 years, and 90, I'd say, it's 3 generations. So, you know, like they want unconditional surrender so they could get their hands on the levers of state. Did they get their hands on the levers of state in the Soviet Union? Did they get, or in Russia after the Soviet Union? Was it unconditional surrender? Of course not. So how are they going to change? Hey, you dudes, you're going to have social democracy. It doesn't work out that way. Okay, so what happened is, yeah, they went for an American neoliberal kind of system, and the bottom dropped out of the economy roughly, when was that, 97, 98, 99, somewhere around there. And Putin was largely the result of that, the failure of Yeltsin and his flunkies. Okay? So they went for a bad sort of economic, political economic system. Now, would the Russians, even if the Americans could have kind of tried to impose social democracy on the Russians, would have they gone for it? They would have been reluctant. Why? So I mentioned this to this PhD, who's arrogant, but a particular type of arrogance, because he thinks that he can apply his small little field of knowledge to everything. That's called pretentiousness. Okay. Now, I was over there in the Soviet Union. I was actually working with to translate song lyrics into English, so people could market the Russians. Well, in one case, it was a Belarusian could market their stuff over here in English-speaking parts of the world, right? So I kind of was, well, you know, I'm keeping track of things and so on and so forth. And this was right after the coup against not Boris Yeltsin, but how someone would forget, the hunchback Gorbachev. I think Gorbachev means hunchback, son of a hunchback. And they hated Gorbachev, and he was trying to get a social democracy or something, maybe a little bit more liberal. Like what he wanted to get was something like what the system Canada had. He visited Canada maybe a couple of times, maybe even more. This is before he became leader, I think, when he was just a Soviet functionary, almost like a commissar or something like that. Okay? And so they hated social democracy. So you're going to sell that to them? They hated Gorbachev. They hated social democracy. Their system was failing. This was not just communism, but then the attempt at social democracy, perestroika, restructuring, right? It was failing. You wouldn't have been able to sell it to them. Yeah, I hate to be the deliverer of bad news, but you cannot dismiss bad news just because you don't like it. Okay, are you getting that, you faux gauchers? So when it comes to Russia, and when I tell you about stuff, about communism, okay, now let's check the languages that I'm working on. Russian, Ukrainian, Lithuanian, one of the 2 Baltic languages, Belarusian. The guide over there liked me so much, he gave me his own copy of Yanka Kupala. Have you ever heard of Yanka Kupala? Do you even care? He's kind of like their Shakespeare, okay? Only much more recent. Hey, how much time have we got? 5 minutes, okay?
A little less.
And the enumeration hasn't stopped yet, because what did I just finish up this summer? Kazakh. Oh, you see, and then I've studied Turkish, which means I've got my way in to Turkmen, the Turkmen language, the language in Uzbekistan, the language in Kyrgyzstan, Kyrgyz, and Uzbek, I guess is what you'd call a language. I got my way into those because they're all Turkic languages, related to Turkish and Kazakh. Yeah? And once I get down to it, if I can ever get hold of it, Tatar. Okay? Now, That's you see, what I've done basically is give you a list of almost, oh yeah, like I've studied Persian and I'm studying old or Farsi and old Iranian, which gives me an in on Tajik. Okay, so have I left any? And you know, I've got my way into Latvian, which is related to Lithuanian. I think I've basically given you an enumeration of all the Soviet republics, 15 of them. What are you doing, you idiots? Do you even worry about getting Russian? And then you're going to be lecturing me about how you know about Russia and communism. You don't know and you don't care. All you care about is your stupid imaginings. Imagine, reimagine. I want to look at the data. And you better too if you're going to be talking to me. And don't you be trying to talk down to me, because I'm way above you. Yeah, I'm talking down to you, but I'm above you because I've got the credentials to back it up. I am arrogant and I'm proud to be arrogant. You're arrogant too and you're pretentious. You're pretending. You idiots. You stupid. Okay. And incidentally, Book of Mormon. I won't necessarily say it's required reading, but if you want to be yipping and yapping about languages, or rather religion, you'd better do your homework. Oh yeah, I'm segueing here. Who is my Muslim neighbor? 99 questions about Islam with a Christian response. Now, I want to make it perfectly clear. I'm an agnostic and I'm an atheist when it comes down to any system that's propagated any idea of God. So that includes I'm an atheist when it comes to the Muslim religion, when it comes to the Christian religion. Now, I was raised on Christianity and very fundamentalist, more Baptist than the Baptists, okay? But I gave that up. Before I hit university, I want to make it clear to my parents that it wasn't university that made me skeptical about Christianity. So, this thing I think I'm going to go through in a little bit more detail. Does it come recommended? Not really. What comes recommended is not reading wee little books like this, okay? Read the foundational stuff, the Hadith, the Quran, okay? Read those things, because there's all sorts of people. Imagine, reimagine. And they're imagining stuff about Islam that just isn't there. For example, it's a religion of peace. No, it's not. You know, it's a religion that requires defense of Islam. That's not peace. If Muslim territories or interests are attacked. And actually, there's another type of fighting that's required for healthy adult males. And that is, anytime your ruler calls war or jihad, you've got to go. Doesn't matter if it's offensive or defensive, okay? That's right there in the Quran. But that's violent, okay? So where they get this, what they don't understand when they're writing is this question about Islam with a Christian response, and they're saying, how do you go out and convert Muslims? And they don't seem to understand that what they're doing, what Christians are doing when they do that is according to Sharia law, is an offense punishable by death, okay? So they're taken, possibly, potentially, depending on who their interlocutors are, potential interlocutors are, they're taking their life into their own hands. And if they convert someone,